Hello friends, in this video I am going to talk about the role of transit planets in our horoscopes and how are they different from the planets of our natal chart. So before we talk about the transits planet, let's first see what are the planets in our natal chart doing. So whenever a native is born, at that time, at that date and at that place, all these three parameters are taken into consideration and a horoscope is made. The sign which is rising at the eastern horizon forms the lagna, and this lagna is a specific first house for the native who is born at that time. This lagna is very important for any native who is born at a particular given time. The planets that were transiting during that time will get into those positions in your horoscope and they will remain there all through your life. And what changes in that natal chart is the dasas. It's not the planetary position which is going to change, but the dashas are going to change. And how are the dashas calculated? They are based upon the nakshatra of the moon at the time of birth. So based upon that nakshatra, the dashas are provided to that horoscope, and whenever a certain dasha comes, the planet which is the lord of that dasha and who is the lord of those houses to which that planet belongs, those houses will give you the results during that dasha, and the planet wherever it is sitting will give you the results of those houses through that house to where it is sitting and to where it is aspecting. So all these parameters will cast their influence when a natal chart is being read. So if something good is going to happen, it means that we are internally ready to bear the karmas of that time, of that dasha. And if something good is going to happen, it again means that we are internally ready to take on that journey of happiness which is going to exhibit through the dasha. Suppose your 7th house's dasha is going to start, which means the lord of your 7th house is going to get you either into partnership, either it's going to give you some promotion, or it can land you up in some marriage proposal or into your marriage. So things like this will happen during the dasha of the planets in your horoscope. So then, how are transits so important? Why should transits be considered while we are doing a chart reading? I am going to talk about that now. See, the planets, they all are revolving around the sun, and sun is in the center of the solar system. Some planets which are close to sun will take a lesser amount of time to revolve, and some planets which are farther from the sun will take longer time to make a revolution of 360 degrees, because the orbit around the sun will form an angle of 360 degrees. So how is it like connected to our birth charts? See, the birth chart is having 12 houses and each house is of 30 degrees. So which means the entire horoscope, when we start from the lagna and come back to the lagna, it will be of 360 degrees. So 30 degrees is given to one sign and there are 12 signs. So the planets will take exactly the same amount of time to make a revolution in your birth chart as they are taking to revolve around the sun in the solar system. Now the planet like Saturn, who is the farthest from the sun, will take the longest amount of time to make one full revolution. The planet Saturn takes about 30 years to complete one revolution. It stays in one sign for 2.5 years. During that 2.5 years period, this Saturn will also go retrograde, since we all know that Saturn is a malefic planet, and when it goes retrograde, it becomes highly malefic, especially in the transits. I'm talking exclusively about the transits. A planet like Jupiter does go retrograde during its transit, and it takes about 1 full year's time to go into the next sign, which means it will take 12 years to complete one revolution. So Jupiter also goes retrograde, but being a benefic, it becomes highly benefic when it goes retrograde. It is suggested that no new work should be started when a planet in transit is retrograde. It could be your malefic or your benefic planets. Now, before I tell you about the other planets revolving around the Lagna, let's first understand how are the transits impacting us. See, the transits are basically the external circumstances around us. So unless we get the right transits, the good dashas will not work. So it means the transits are highly important to be considered while we are predicting something. Suppose a good dasha for you is running. Suppose you are running into the dasha of 2nd house, 7th house, 11th house. So these are all good dashas for you. It shows that you can get married during that time. But somehow you are not able to get married. What is it that is stopping you from getting married? Maybe you are not getting the right proposals. You are not getting the right match for your marriage. This could be the only criteria. So why is it happening? It is happening because of the transits. Unless you get the right transit, a good transit, you will not be able to find the right match. So it goes like this. If the dasha is good and the transit is good, your work would be done very easily without any efforts. If the dasha is good but the transit is bad, you will have to undergo lots of efforts, and the work is not going to get easily despite getting good dasha. Dasha is what you are ready to undertake, what is happening inside you, what you really want at that time, that part of time. And transit is what you are getting environmentally. So these are two different things. If you are getting a bad dasha but a good transit, then also efforts are required to get the desired amount of results. If you are getting a bad dasha and the transit is also bad, in that case, my dear friends, you are going through a very bad time and you need to perform some remedies so that the suffering is reduced to some extent. So this is how the transits and the dashas should be taken into consideration. As I told you about Saturn and Jupiter, one more thing is that whenever these two planets are transiting into a particular sign, they are together in a sign during their transit, it will give you excellent results. Whatever work you start during that time will last throughout your life. It will never get spoiled. If you plan to get married during this double transit of Saturn and Jupiter, you can be rest assured that there won't be anything like divorce. So whatever endeavor or new work you start during this double transit will work in a very beneficial manner for you, even though there is no dasha showing something, some event to happen. But if they are together in some house, event related to that house or to wherever they are aspecting, event related to that house can happen during this transit. Now, as I told you, Saturn becomes highly malefic when it goes retrograde, and Jupiter also becomes highly benefic. Jupiter becomes benefic and Saturn becomes malefic. So whenever the planets in your transits are under retro condition, at that time it is advisable not to start some new work, because anything that you start during that retrograde period of planets, you may have to rethink over it after some time, and that will not give you favorable results. Okay, so never start any new work when the planets go retro during their transits. So what should be done during that time? At that time, the planning part should be done. If you are planning to start a new business or if you are planning to get married, at that time, you should start working towards your goals. You should start doing the homework part. But finalizing something, starting something should only be performed once they become straight. One more thing I have seen, there are lots of people who are having retrograde planets in their charts. So for those people, the results are deferred to a lot of extent. They will not get the desired results very soon. They will only get the good results of those planets during their dashas, when these planets, those same planets in the transits, they go straight. Suppose you have a retro Saturn in your birth chart. So the dasha of this Saturn is also running, but you will not be able to get the results of this Saturn during the dasha unless the same Saturn in the transit goes straight, which means the results are only for a very limited time. So that's the reason why people with retrograde planets are not able to perform their tasks very quickly, because the results are only given to them when the transitory planets of those natal planets go straight. Okay. Now whenever a planet is in the retrograde motion, at that time these planets do go static before they become in their normal motion. So when they become static, at that time they exhibit a lot of energy within them. So that's a very strong period when a planet is in the static motion. Now coming back to the transit period of other planets, a planet like Mars will take about 1.5 months to enter into the other sign. A planet like Sun takes about 1 month to enter into the other sign, which means Sun will take about 1 full year to complete one rotation. Planet like Moon takes about 28 days to complete one full rotation of the horoscope. It means it stays in one sign for 2 days and 1/4 of a day. So if you want to understand how the day would go, you have to take the transit of Moon. If you have to look out for the month, what can you expect in a particular month? In that case, you have to consider the transit of Sun. And if you have to consider how I am going to get rewarded for my karmas during this dasha, in that case you have to consider the transit of Saturn, because Saturn during its transit can give you good results also and it can give you bad results also, depends upon your karmas. Whatever you deserve, you will get rightly during the transit of Saturn. Now Jupiter's transit is always a blessing. It always blesses. So if you are expecting something good to happen, then consider the transit of Jupiter. So the transit of Rahu and Ketu will take about 1.5 years to change their sign. So they take a bit longer. So hence the transits of Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu and Ketu should never be ignored. Rahu will give the results just like Saturn and Ketu will give the results just like Mars. So Rahu gives sufferings and Ketu gives detachment. It will just detach you from the things wherever it is posited. Now the planets, if they are the lords of the Kendras, especially the malefic planets like Mars, Saturn, if they are the lords of the Kendras, during their transits to whatever house they go, they will not give bad results, because we all know the functional nature of the planet will change by being the lords of the Kendra houses. Benefics, when they become the lords of the Kendra houses, they will not be so beneficial. They will not be under the power to give lot of beneficial results. So you should keep this also in your mind. And the planets who are the lords of 1, 5 and 9 houses, they will always give you good results during their transits. Now, there are certain times when these transit planets are not able to give you their results. When are those times? Suppose a planet enters into a sign where it is debilitated. Suppose Jupiter in its transit enters into Capricorn. Here this Jupiter is debilitated. So how will it give you good results? During the entire 1 year period, it's going to give you sufferings. It's going to give you difficulties. So the signs should also be taken into consideration. Suppose the same Jupiter is entering into Sagittarius sign, which it will be doing on 5th of November, and there is planet Sun, natal Sun or transit Sun placed there, and this Jupiter goes into close conjunction with the Sun. In that case also, it will not be able to give you its results until it is away from that combustion degrees. Once it is farther away from the combustion degrees, only then it will give you good results. If the same planet is entering into a sign, but it is in the Pap Kartari Yoga, which means on the adjacent side or on the adjacent houses there are malefic planets, and this transit planet is in between those two malefics. In that condition also, this planet loses its capacity to give you good results. Now, there is one more condition. If this transit planet enters into a sign where there is Rahu or Ketu, so as we all know, Ketu Rahu enters this way and the planet is entering, going to move like this. So which means this planet, transit planet, until it crosses the degrees of Ketu, jab tak it is like here, it is within the degrees of Ketu, it will not give you results. After it has crossed the degrees of Ketu, only then it will be able to give you results. So this thing also should be kept in your mind. If Saturn is the lord of your Lagna, in that case, during its transit, it will not give you bad results. Similarly, if there is the Lagna of Aries and Scorpio, in that case, Mars will not give you bad results. In the Lagnas of Venus, that is Taurus and Libra, here also Saturn is not so malefic as it should be. So these are certain things you should keep in mind. Now one more thing. If a planet is transiting to your 6th, 8th or 12th house, now these are the bad houses, the trick houses of a horoscope. So what should you expect? So if a benefic planet is entering into a trick house, it will not give you good results. It's understandable. But there are certain cases where it will cease to give you bad results. Which means, like Jupiter, if it is getting exalted in your 8th house or 6th house or 12th house, then it will not do you bad. If this transit Jupiter is entering into its own sign or into its Mool Trikon sign or into its friend's sign, in that case also it will not do you bad. So if the same Jupiter is getting debilitated in 6th, 8th and 12th houses, in that case it will be a testing time for you. So you have to keep these things in your mind. Now, there are certain houses where these transiting planets will always give you good results. Like for Saturn, the 3rd house, the 6th house and the 11th house, these are good houses to give its results. In all other places, the Saturn is not going to give you good results, especially by considering wherever your moon is. When the Saturn is in the 12th house to moon or in the place where the moon is or in the next house to moon, in that case this Saturn becomes extremely malefic, and that period of 7.5 years is called as the Sade Sati period, when this Saturn gives you testing times and difficult results. There is another position of this Saturn with respect to Moon which is not going to give you good results. When from the Moon this Saturn is in the 4th house or in the 8th house, these are two periods called as dayas, and these are also not good periods, and these are also very testing times with respect to the transit of Saturn. So Saturn is only going to give you good results in the 3rd house, 6th house and the 11th house during its transit. Now the planet like Jupiter is good in many houses. It gives you good results in the 2nd house. It gives you good result in the 5th house, 7th house, 9th house and 11th house. In these places, when Jupiter is transiting, it will give you very beneficial results. And the results which are related to its Karak Tattvas, it is Karka for good wealth, children, prosperity, fame and happiness, and for ladies it's husband. So all these things should be in good dignity when Jupiter is transiting in these houses. Similarly, Mars is good in 3rd, 6th and 11th house. Sun is good in 3rd, 6th and 11th house as well as in the 10th house. Moon is good in your 3rd, 6th, 7th, 10th and 11th house. So Moon is good in lots of houses, and Mercury is good in 4th house, 6th house, 8th house and your 10th house. Venus is good in all houses except 6th house, 7th house and your 10th house. And Rahu, Ketu are good in 3rd house, 6th house, 10th house and 11th house. So these are the position of the transiting planets where they will give you excellent results. So when these transiting planets are entering their own signs, then also they will give you good results. When these transiting planets are entering their exalted signs, then also they will give you good results. And one more thing not to ignore during the transits is that each planet, whenever it enters a sign, there it is given a point by all the 7 planets excluding Rahu and Ketu. So all the 7 planets plus Lagna, they give one beneficial point to that planet in the house. So suppose Jupiter enters the sign of Sagittarius. So it's not that the entire 1 year period of Jupiter in Sagittarius is going to be good. On certain occasions only Jupiter will give its good results, and those are the times when it is falling in the Kaksha of a particular planet which has given point in the Sagittarius sign to this Jupiter. So suppose Mars gives a point to this Jupiter. So when Jupiter enters into the degree of Mars, during that period Jupiter will give very good results in the Sagittarius sign, and this Jupiter will also give you good results to those houses to which this Mars is the lord of. So these things should be kept in mind while we are studying the transits of planets. So friends, this was all about the transits, and I'll come up with the transit of Jupiter in the sign of Sagittarius in my next video. Until then, bye friends.